Beneath Indiana's quiet fields lie secrets older than history, mysterious mounds no one can explain, giant skeletons that don't fit the human story, ancient symbols carved in stone. In no known language, science shrugs, locals whisper, but the land remembers. This isn't folklore. This is Indiana's ancient truth, and it's nothing like you've been told. Welcome to the forgotten side of Indiana. Welcome to the ancient mysteries science can't explain. Let's begin. The Angel Mounds Enigma, civilization older than history? There's a stretch of land near the Ohio River where time folds in on itself. Just outside the city of Evansville, Indiana, sits a quiet landscape that most would drive past without a second glance. The fields are green, the earth is soft, and a gentle breeze moves through the sycamore trees lining the edges of the clearing. But hidden beneath that peaceful surface is a mystery, older than the state itself, older than the United States, perhaps even older than we dare to admit. This place is called Angel Mounds, named not after celestial beings, but after the angel family who once owned the property. Yet the name feels strangely fitting, because this site radiates something unearthly, something profound, something forgotten. Archaeologists will tell you it was a Mississippian settlement, home to a thriving native civilization between 1000 and 1450 AD. But dig deeper, both into the ground and into the layers of oral history, and you'll find a story that refuses to sit quietly on a museum plaque. You'll find alignments with the stars, relics that shouldn't exist, and rumors of a knowledge that predates known civilization. Let's step quietly now and listen to the land. The mounds that shouldn't be. The Angel Mounds site spans over 600 acres, and it contains 11 large earthen mounds, carefully shaped and structured, arranged with mathematical precision. The largest of them, Mound A, rises nearly 20 feet above the surrounding terrain. It was built not by machines or modern tools, but by hands. Thousands upon thousands of hands, moving earth basket by basket. For decades, mainstream archaeologists claimed the mounds were little more than the remains of a fortified village, a ceremonial and political center for Mississippian people. But questions began to emerge that didn't fit so neatly into the standard timeline. Why were the mounds aligned so precisely with the solstices and equinoxes? How did their creators possess such a refined understanding of astronomy and geometry? Why do some of the relics found nearby resemble objects discovered in Central America, Mexico, and even as far as the Ohio Hopewell tradition, spanning a massive range of time and geography? And why do the bones found in the surrounding region hint at individuals far taller than average, some reportedly nearing 7 or 8 feet in height? The deeper the investigations went, the more the mystery expanded. A lost civilization, or something else? The Mississippian culture was one of the most sophisticated native civilizations in pre-Columbian North America. But something about Angel Mounds feels older, as if the Mississippians may not have been the originators, but rather the inheritors. Some local tribes, including members of the Shawnee and Miami, have passed down oral traditions that speak of a people before, a race that lived in great cities, shaped the land into pyramids and platforms, and then vanished long before the arrival of their ancestors. These people, they say, were giants or perhaps beings gifted by the stars. They lived in harmony with the earth but wielded knowledge that defied understanding, knowledge about the cycles of the sky, of energy within the land, and of how to encode that wisdom into stone. Was Angel Mounds the seat of such a forgotten civilization, or a remnant? Strange artifacts, stranger connections. When excavations began in earnest during the 1930s, thousands of artifacts were uncovered. Clay figurines, ornate pottery, stone tools, and ceremonial items. Among them, researchers found objects inscribed with symbols that still puzzle linguists to this day. Some resemble glyphs from the Mesoamerican Olmec and Maya, while others are eerily similar to the Adena symbols found in ancient Ohio burial mounds. How could similar symbols exist across such distant and supposedly isolated cultures? Then there's the copper sun disk, unearthed near the site and believed to have held religious or astronomical significance. Its intricate design includes spokes aligned with solar events and concentric rings that some interpret as a calendar. Even stranger, traces of mica, a mineral not naturally found in Indiana, were discovered in the burial sites. Mica was highly prized by Mesoamerican cultures for its reflective qualities and spiritual uses. But how did it get here? Could this suggest trade routes that extended far beyond what conventional history believes possible? Could it hint at a shared ancient source of knowledge, long since lost? The giant bones controversy. In the early 20th century, newspaper accounts across the Midwest, including some from Indiana, reported the discovery of giant human skeletons in mound sites and riverbanks. Often described as being between 7 and 9 feet tall, these remains would appear in articles and then disappear entirely. Some reports linked the giant skeletons directly to angel mounds or the surrounding region, describing massive skulls with unusual cranial shapes and double rows of teeth, a detail repeated in several Midwestern mound discoveries. These claims were typically dismissed as exaggeration or hoaxes, yet no one can quite explain why so many consistent reports existed over such a wide area. And stranger still, some researchers point out that early Smithsonian excavations at mound sites often resulted in sealed or lost records, with artifacts allegedly vanishing into archives, never to be seen again. Could someone be suppressing a deeper history of North America, one that includes an advanced, possibly non-human race? Or is this simply the fog of time, making stories larger than life? The sound of the mound. Local legends persist about odd phenomena around the Angel Mound site. Some visitors have reported hearing low hums or rhythmic pulses, especially near the largest mound at sunrise or sunset. Spiritual practitioners say the land vibrates with energy, and some believe the mounds may be geomagnetic markers, aligned to ley lines or energetic grids crisscrossing the earth. Dowsers, those who use rods or pendulums to detect hidden energy, have claimed the site pulses with a resonant frequency, similar to sacred spaces across the globe. What exactly were the mounds for? Were they tombs, temples, observatories? Or something stranger, devices meant to tune human consciousness, to align our inner worlds with the cosmos? The silence of the experts. Despite decades of research, Angel Mounds still holds its secrets close. Archaeologists offer explanations, ritual centers, defensive structures, platforms for chiefs, but none of these fully explain the site's complexity or mystery. And curiously, deeper excavations into the lowest soil layers are often avoided, citing preservation concerns. Yet one can't help but wonder, what lies beneath the foundations? Is it possible that the Mississippians themselves built atop something far older? Perhaps a city of stone now turned to dust? Or the bones of a people long forgotten by history? Whispers from the earth. Today, Angel Mounds is a state historic site. Quiet, curated, educational. But beneath the neat pathways and plaques lies a story that still breathes in the earth. Every blade of grass, every shift of soil, every relic unearthed, is a whisper from the past. And perhaps, just perhaps, if you walk the mounds at dusk, you'll feel it too. That strange sense that the land remembers something we've forgotten. That we are not the first to walk these fields. And that history is far older and far stranger than we were ever taught. Next, the Martinsville skeletons, unearthed giants that history forgot. There's something strange about the soil in southern Indiana. It remembers. It hides things for centuries, sometimes thousands of years, and then, without warning, it offers them back. Sometimes it's just a relic or a weathered shard of pottery. But other times, it's something far more difficult to explain. In the quiet town of Martinsville, about 30 miles southwest of Indianapolis, such an offering occurred. And when it did, it shook everything locals thought they knew about the land beneath their feet. This is the story of the Martinsville skeletons, an unsettling discovery that emerged from the earth and then vanished into silence. A routine dig, a shocking discovery. The year was 1925. A farmer outside Martinsville was digging a trench to lay water pipes through his field. The land had been in his family for generations. Just flat Indiana soil, surrounded by quiet woods and shallow creeks. But a few feet beneath the surface, the shovel struck something unexpected. Bone. At first, he thought it might be a deer, or perhaps a cow buried long ago. But as he dug further, the shape of a human skeleton began to appear. and then another, and another. Soon, it became clear that this was no random burial. It was a grave site, and a very strange one, because the bones were enormous, giants in the earth. By the time word spread and the trench was fully excavated, locals reported that 6 skeletons had been uncovered. Each one was unusually large. The shortest was said to measure over 7 feet tall, while the largest was reported at nearly 9 feet in length. Their skulls were massive, and their jawbones unusually thick. Eyewitnesses described double rows of teeth, anatomical anomalies not seen in modern humans. The bones were taken to a local physician and later examined by a small team of researchers from Indiana University. But then, as quickly as the skeletons had surfaced, the story vanished. No formal report was ever published. The bones were reportedly sent for further study and never returned. Some say they were shipped to the Smithsonian. Others claim they were simply buried again, this time deeper and on purpose. Whatever the truth, one fact remains. The giant skeletons of Martinsville are gone, and with them, so are the questions they left behind. Folklore or suppressed history. In the years that followed, whispers spread through Morgan County. Some said the skeletons were ancient Native American chiefs. Others believed they were a forgotten race, perhaps connected to the mysterious Adena mound builders, who also left behind reports of tall skeletons across Ohio and Indiana. There are even those who connect the Martinsville discovery to biblical references, pointing to mentions of giants in the earth from Genesis, or to Native American legends of towering people who once ruled the land before being overthrown by smaller tribes. But what stands out most is this: Martinsville is not alone. Throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s, dozens of similar finds were reported across Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky, often associated with mound sites and often involving unusually large skeletons. The reports followed a pattern: discovery, brief publicity, removal, and then silence. Could this pattern be evidence of a suppressed historical truth? What the locals still say. In Martinsville, the story lingers in half-whispered recollections. Elderly residents talk about the big bones their grandparents saw. Some claim to remember seeing photographs now lost in attics or family albums. Others speak of strange lights that sometimes appear over the old field at night, or of odd vibrations in the ground nearby. There are even reports of unusual animal behavior in the area: dogs that refuse to enter the site, birds that avoid flying overhead. Could these be coincidences, artifacts of rural imagination? Or could they be signs that something ancient, something powerful, still stirs beneath the surface? The problem of the missing bones. Skeptics argue that the skeletons must have been mismeasured. After all, bones warp over time, and amateur measurements are prone to error. They say the reports were exaggerated by newspapers eager for sensational stories. But here's the problem: the consistency of the accounts. From Martinsville to Muncie, from New Harmony to Vincennes, the same details appear again and again. A skeleton's measuring between 7 to 9 feet. A massive skulls with exaggerated features. Double rows of teeth. A stone or copper artifacts buried with the remains. And always, the sudden disappearance of evidence. Even the Smithsonian itself is not immune to scrutiny. In 2014, an online rumor exploded claiming that the Smithsonian admitted to destroying thousands of giant skeletons in the early 1900s. Though this has been widely debunked as a hoax, it reflects a deeper truth: that people no longer trust the official story, especially when that story seems to keep rewriting the past to fit a narrower, neater narrative. A landscape of secrets. What is it about southern Indiana that seems to attract these mysteries? Could there be something about the geology of the region, its limestone caves, its underground waterways, that preserves bones in an unusual way? Or is it that Indiana, sitting at the crossroads of ancient mound-building cultures, holds pieces of a much larger and older puzzle? Some believe the land itself may be hiding layers of forgotten history. Beneath the farms and highways, beneath the towns and forests, lie civilizations we've barely begun to imagine. And perhaps, the Martinsville skeletons were just the beginning. Listening to the earth. The field where the bones were found is still there. There's no plaque, no marker, just grass and sky and the slow passage of time. But if you walk there at twilight when the world grows still, you might feel something. A deep silence, a hush, the kind of silence that feels inhabited. And maybe, just maybe, if you listen close enough, you'll hear the earth whisper back. It doesn't forget. It never has. And someday, it might tell us everything. Next, the Wabash serpent, a forgotten effigy beneath the river's bend. The river moves like a serpent, winding, coiling, curving through the land. The Wabash River is Indiana's lifeline. It cuts across the state like a ribbon of memory, ancient, quiet, and always flowing. But some say that buried along one of its forgotten bends lies a shape not made by nature, but by design. A serpent carved into the earth itself. Not a carving of stone, but of land. A massive earthwork effigy, so weathered and overgrown that even locals have forgotten it was ever there. This is the mystery of the Wabash serpent, Indiana's version of the famous Ohio Serpent Mound. A sacred shape hidden in plain sight, and a symbol of something much deeper and far more ancient than science can explain. A whisper in the soil. The legend of the Wabash serpent is not something you'll find on most maps or in museum guides. It survives mostly in oral histories, in faded 19th century journals, and in the fragments of stories passed down by early settlers and native elders. According to these sources, near a quiet bend in the Wabash River, somewhere between Logansport and Delphi, there once stood an earthen formation shaped unmistakably like a giant snake. Its body coiled along the ridge of a hill, its head pointed toward the rising sun, and its open mouth faced a strange, solitary mound, possibly an altar or celestial marker. The formation was said to stretch hundreds of feet from tail to head. Some reports described it as 12 feet wide and overgrown with grass and brush even in the mid-1800s. Today, that area is thick with farmland and forest. The river has shifted, roads have been paved, but the whispers persist. Old farmers talk about that odd rise in the field. Hikers mention a strange ridge that curves like a question mark. And researchers who study indigenous effigy mounds suspect that the Wabash serpent may be one of the oldest effigy earthworks in the Midwest. Why a serpent? To understand the mystery, we must understand the symbol. The serpent is one of the most powerful and persistent symbols in ancient North American cultures. For the Adena, Hopewell, and even the Mississippian peoples, the snake represented transformation, rebirth, fertility, and most intriguingly, cosmic knowledge. Serpent effigies often align with celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, or the rising of certain stars. Some researchers believe they were used as astronomical calendars, or even portals of communication with the spirit world. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, was a god of wisdom and the dawn. Across the globe, serpents are seen guarding underground knowledge, sacred sites, or the secrets of immortality. So why Indiana? Why the banks of the Wabash? And why has the serpent here been almost entirely forgotten? Lost to time, or buried on purpose? The few documents that mention the Wabash serpent are cryptic. In an 1852 journal from a traveling preacher named Elias Goff, he writes of a sinuous rise upon the riverbank shaped most like a snake or dragon, facing eastward, a great ditch behind its back, as though once bordered by water. Goff claimed local native guides considered it a site of spirits, and that men who sleep near it dream strange and terrible things. Another account, dated 1878 from a Morgan County antiquarian, describes a long, winding ridge that no plow has ever touched, located on private land. He called it a serpent of the earth, though no formal survey was conducted. By the time the early 20th century rolled around, the Wabash serpent had slipped entirely from the historical record. Some say it was plowed under. Others believe the river's changing path swallowed it. But there are those who quietly suggest it may have been covered up deliberately, buried to protect something deeper beneath it, something people weren't supposed to find. Magnetic anomalies and echoes in the ground. In recent decades, amateur researchers using magnetometers and ground-penetrating radar have explored parts of the Wabash floodplain. Some claim to have found subtle curvatures in the land, where magnetic readings spike unnaturally. Others describe subterranean voids, long, narrow chambers running parallel to the river, beneath what appear to be hills with no geological explanation. Are these natural formations, old riverbanks, or are they collapsed tunnels or buried chambers built by hands long gone? Some theorists believe the Wabash serpent may have been more than a symbol. It could have been a marker for an underground structure, perhaps a ceremonial chamber, or even a burial vault for individuals considered divine or dangerous. Similar beliefs surround the Serpent Mound in Ohio, where some suggest underground anomalies point to unknown energy sources or even hidden tombs. Could Indiana's forgotten serpent be part of the same ancient network? A civilization that spanned rivers and time? The shadow of the sky. Satellite images of the Wabash floodplain, especially those taken during drought years when crops wither and soil patterns shift, have revealed strange shadows, curving ridges, faint, sinuous outlines in cornfields, arcs that seem too intentional to be natural. In 2012, a group of archaeoastronomers used these images to propose a possible layout for the serpent's path. Based on their estimates, the formation, if it ever existed, may have aligned with the spring equinox sunrise, the Pleiades star cluster, and possibly the Venus cycle, a complex 8-year orbit tracked by many ancient cultures. But without full excavation, it remains theory. The land is still privately owned. No university has sponsored a dig, and local officials dismiss the legend as just that, a legend. But the shape is still there, faint, slumbering, waiting. What else lies beneath? The Wabash serpent may be more than a curiosity. It may be a key that connects Indiana to a forgotten chapter of North American history, a time when civilizations moved Earth on a scale we still can't fully replicate, when the land itself was a sacred text, written in mounds and rivers, hills and stars. Time before time. Perhaps the reason science doesn't explain these mysteries is because they don't fit the science we know. Perhaps they are echoes of a science older than ours, a language spoken in soil and shadow, waiting to be remembered. The serpent sleeps, but not forever. Even now, locals say the land around that bend of the Wabash feels strange. The air is thicker there. Sound behaves differently. Some claim electronics malfunction nearby, or that strange lights can be seen low over the water at night. Most people pass by and never notice, but some feel it, the faint outline beneath their feet, the hush in the wind, the coiled presence that doesn't move, but also never left. The Wabash serpent may sleep beneath the surface, but legends say serpents always awaken when the time is right. Next, the Vincennes underground secret tunnels, vanished rooms, and the echoes below. Some towns whisper, Vincennes hums. Situated on the banks of the Wabash River, Vincennes is the oldest European settlement in Indiana, with roots reaching back to the early 1700s. But even before French fur traders arrived, this region was sacred ground to the native peoples who lived here. They spoke of spirits in the earth and of voices rising from beneath the soil. Today, Vincennes is a quiet town. Brick buildings, historic homes, colonial charm. But beneath the calm streets, something ancient lingers. Locals call them the tunnels, an underground network of mysterious passageways, chambers, and hidden rooms stretching under old neighborhoods, government buildings, and forgotten basements. Some say they were built for bootlegging. Others whisper of military secrets, ancient burial vaults, or pre-Columbian stonework from a civilization long erased. But the strangest thing of all? No one knows who built them or why. The first sightings, entrances that shouldn't be there. For decades, stories have circulated among Vincennes residents. Stories of stone-lined tunnels discovered during renovations, of basements with sealed doorways, bricked over in a hurry, of children who went exploring and returned pale, shaken, unable to speak about what they saw. Construction crews working on roads have uncovered arched chambers, only to see them quietly filled in and paved over within days. Plumbers, electricians, and utility workers have all reported caverns beneath foundations, sometimes containing old tools, candle stubs, or symbols carved into limestone walls. Some of the tunnels are tall enough for a person to walk through. Others are so narrow you'd have to crawl. But the stonework, when it can be seen, is old. Far older than 18th century colonial construction. Some say it resembles the dry-laid masonry seen in ancient Edina and Hopewell ceremonial centers. Structures built with no mortar, the hidden door beneath Grouseland. One of the most persistent legend centers around Grouseland, the historic mansion of William Henry Harrison, the 9th President of the United States. Completed in 1804, Grouseland is a stately brick home, frozen in time, preserved as a museum. But according to whispers from former caretakers and local historians, Grouseland once had a sealed tunnel entrance in its cellar. The doorway, they say, led to a stone passage that vanished beneath the hill and ran toward the river. When one young maintenance worker allegedly opened a portion of the wall during a repair in the 1970s, he found a tunnel just wide enough for a man to pass through. He followed it for several minutes until he reached a circular chamber with smooth walls, and something even stranger, a carved stone bowl in the center, filled with stagnant water. He fled. The entrance was resealed, and no official mention of the tunnel exists in the records of Grouseland's restorations. Yet former staff still tell the story, quietly. Tunnels older than the town. There are, of course, more rational explanations. Some suggest the tunnels were used for bootlegging during Prohibition, or for smuggling goods during wartime. Others propose they were part of the Underground Railroad, offering sanctuary to enslaved people fleeing north. But there's one problem with all of these theories. Parts of the tunnel system predate them. Old survey maps from the early 1800s show depressions and sinkholes lining what is now downtown Vincennes, features later connected to subsurface structures during 20th century construction. Some historians believe the tunnels were already there when the French arrived. One 1740s French military report describes a dry cavern that the native people call sacred, near the confluence of the Wabash and the smaller Eel River. So who built them, and what were they used for? Echoes from below, the paranormal side of the mystery. Those who have lived in Vincennes for generations often speak of the strange sounds that rise from underground. In certain neighborhoods, especially near the oldest parts of town, residents report hearing distant voices, footsteps, or chanting from beneath their floors, especially at night. Some describe a low humming or vibration, like a tuning fork beneath the earth. In a now abandoned building once used as a Masonic lodge, caretakers claimed the basement would periodically fill with a sweet, metallic scent, and that a blue glow could sometimes be seen leaking from cracks near the old coal chute, until the room was cemented shut in the 1980s. There are even tales of phantom figures, men in cloaks, tall shadows slipping across basement walls, vanishing through bricked-up arches. Psychics who visited the town often describe a powerful ley line beneath Vincennes, intersecting near the river. Others believe the area may sit above a geological anomaly, a chamber that amplifies energy, memory, or consciousness. But whatever the explanation, the question remains: what lies beneath Vincennes? And why does the town seem so reluctant to dig too deep? The suppressed excavation. In 1993, an independent archaeology group from a Midwestern university proposed a small excavation project beneath a parking lot in Vincennes, where ground-penetrating radar had revealed a large arched void about 10 feet down. The project was approved briefly. Then, just days before the dig was to begin, it was quietly shut down. No reason was given. The area was paved over again, and the lead researcher was instructed not to speak to the press. When local journalists asked questions, they were told the project had been canceled due to budgetary limitations. But unofficially, one member of the team claimed they had found something unusual in the preliminary scans. A perfectly geometric chamber, roughly 20 feet across, a civilization forgotten or hidden. Could Vincennes sit atop the ruins of an unknown civilization, one that carved stone tunnels long before the modern era? Some believe the region was once part of a network of ceremonial centers that stretched from Cahokia in Illinois to the Hopewell Mounds of Ohio. Others suggest the tunnels may predate even those built by a culture whose name we no longer remember. A few daring researchers connect the site to the myth of Aztalan, a lost city described in both native lore and early European writings, said to have stone walls, temples, and underground passages guarded by sky-watching priests. Still others propose something even stranger, that the tunnels may not be entirely physical, that they are places where time folds, where memory collects, echo chambers of consciousness itself. If so, perhaps we're not meant to find them. Not yet. Listen to the ground. If you walk the streets of Vincennes in the early morning fog, you may feel it. That hum beneath your feet, that strange sense of presence in the silence between sounds. Stop by a building built before 1900 and ask to see the basement. Some shop owners will laugh and say it's just old stone, but others will grow quiet. They might say, "We had a door down there once, bricked it up years ago. Don't ask me why, just felt wrong." The truth, like the tunnels, is buried, but it's still there, waiting to be uncovered. Next, the Witch's Circle of Steuben County, a stone ring older than the forest. Some places feel wrong the moment you step into them. Others feel too quiet, as if the air itself is holding its breath. And then, there are those rare places where you sense you are being watched. Not by anything alive today, but by something old. Something that remembers a time before your name, your town, your country ever existed. Deep in Steuben County, tucked away in a remote clearing, sits one such place. Locals call it the Witch's Circle, though no one knows who gave it that name, or why. At first glance, it's just a ring of weathered stones, moss-covered and half-sunk into the earth. But step closer, and you realize something unsettling. The circle shouldn't be here, and its origins may be far older than the surrounding forest itself. The discovery, a clearing that shouldn't exist. The first written account of the Witch's Circle dates back to the mid-1800s, when early settlers ventured deep into the wilderness of northern Indiana, clearing trees to build their homes. One group came upon a perfectly round clearing, roughly 30 feet across, in the middle of otherwise untouched woodland. At its center, a circle of upright stones, 13 in total, stood like silent sentinels, some nearly 4 feet tall. There were no tool marks, no signs of quarrying. The stones were smooth, yet not naturally rounded, and they were arranged with mathematical precision, each one spaced evenly apart, forming an almost perfect compass alignment to the cardinal directions. But here's the strange part. According to geological surveys, these stones didn't match the rock naturally found in this area. They had been brought from miles away. By who and when? No one knew. Older than the trees. Modern forestry experts estimate that the surrounding woods are roughly 200 to 300 years old, meaning they began growing well before European settlers arrived, but long after the stone circle was built. When soil core samples were taken near the stones in the 1970s, they revealed layers of compacted earth undisturbed for over 1,000 years, suggesting the stones were placed there long before the forest existed. Some archaeologists tentatively linked the site to the Adena or Hopewell cultures, known for their ceremonial mounds across Ohio and Indiana. But the layout of the stones doesn't match other known Adena sites. The 13-stone design, aligned to the solstices and equinoxes, is unlike anything else in the Midwest. The closest comparisons some researchers could find were Neolithic stone circles in Europe, but those were built 5,000 years ago. Could an ancient, unknown group of people, predating recorded history in Indiana, have built their own mini Stonehenge in these woods? And if so, for what purpose? Whispers of rituals and fires that wouldn't die. Local legends grew around the circle. Stories of night fires that burn in the clearing with no visible source. Of hooded figures spotted in the mist, chanting in a language no one understands. Teenagers dared each other to spend the night inside the circle. Most would leave before dawn, claiming to hear footsteps in the leaves, even when they were alone. Some reported that time felt wrong, their watches stopping, hours passing in what felt like minutes. One man in the 1950s claimed he fell asleep in the circle and woke up miles away, near the edge of the forest, with no memory of how he got there. Another claimed to see shadows moving counterclockwise around the stones, even though the moon was still. There are even whispers that animals refuse to cross the circle's boundary. Birds fall silent near it. Deer keep their distance. The lost camper. In 1983, a young camper reportedly vanished near the Witch's Circle. According to friends, they had been hiking toward the clearing to see the ghost stones, as they called it. But when the group reached the site, one boy was gone. They searched all night, calling his name, circling the area again and again. The next morning, he was found lying unconscious inside the circle. He was alive but shaken. When asked what had happened, he could only say, "The stones were talking." He couldn't describe what he heard, only that voices were calling him from beneath the earth, saying things he couldn't repeat. His parents moved away from Indiana shortly afterward, carvings that shouldn't exist. In 2009, an amateur historian documented faint carvings on some of the stones, lines, and spiral patterns not visible in early photographs from decades before. How could carvings appear on stones that had been sitting there untouched for centuries? Some skeptics suggest it was modern vandalism, but the markings are weathered, their grooves filled with moss, suggesting they had been there for much longer. And strangely, some of the symbols resemble ancient petroglyphs found thousands of miles away in Europe and South America. Spiral suns, lunar crescents, and interlocked diamond shapes thought to represent gateways or portals. If this is true, it hints at a shared, forgotten knowledge, or travelers from far-off lands long before history tells us they were here. Scientists can't explain the energy here. In 2015, a team of paranormal researchers brought electromagnetic sensors and ground-penetrating radar to the site. The readings were odd. Inside the circle, electromagnetic fluctuations spiked erratically, as if the Earth itself was humming with energy. Compass needles spun, refusing to settle on north. But the radar scans were even stranger. Beneath the circle, about 6 feet down, there was a perfectly round void, roughly 15 feet across. A buried chamber or natural formation? No one knows, because digging on the site is prohibited by the county after a failed attempt to excavate in the 1980s resulted in strange equipment malfunctions and workers refusing to return. An ancient observatory or something else? One of the leading theories is that the Witch's Circle was once a celestial observatory, used by a lost civilization to track the sun, moon, and stars. The alignment of the stones suggests a calendar marking the solstices and equinoxes, much like Stonehenge. But others suggest something more unsettling. Some esoteric scholars believe the circle is a ritual gateway, a place where early shamans or priests opened a connection to other worlds or other dimensions. Native oral traditions from nearby tribes speak of thin places in the land, where the barrier between the living and the spirit world weakens. Could this stone circle mark one of those places? If so, perhaps it isn't a ruin at all. Perhaps it's a warning. Standing in the circle. Today, the Witch's Circle is overgrown. The stones are crumbling, covered in moss and ivy. But if you find your way there, locals say you'll know when you've reached it. The forest suddenly grows silent. The wind dies, the air feels heavier, and if you're brave enough to step inside, you may feel a strange vibration under your feet. Some describe it as a low hum. Others say it feels like a heartbeat deep in the earth. The mystery of the circle remains unsolved. Who built it? Next, the singing mounds of Indiana, burial hills that whisper at night. There are places in Indiana where the landscape rises in soft, rounded hills, scattered across meadows and forests. To the untrained eye, they seem like nothing more than natural formations, gentle mounds of earth shaped by time. But some of these mounds are not natural, and some of them do something impossible. They sing. The ancient mounds of Indiana. Indiana is home to hundreds of mysterious earthen mounds, many believed to have been built over 2,000 years ago by ancient indigenous cultures. Some are burial sites, some ceremonial, and others have no clear purpose at all. Yet, among these countless mounds, a few stand apart, known locally as the Singing Mounds. These particular mounds are scattered in isolated patches of woodland near the Wabash River. They are not the largest or the most elaborate, but they share one strange phenomenon that no scientist has been able to explain. At night, especially in the hour just before dawn, these mounds emit a faint, melodic hum. There are no instruments, no wind through hollow chambers, no birds making the sound. The earth itself sings. The first accounts, voices from the ground. The earliest written reference to the Singing Mounds dates back to 1821. A trapper described hearing what sounded like low chanting while camping near a mound late at night. Thinking it was a nearby tribe performing a ritual, he approached cautiously, only to find the area completely empty. When he stood atop the mound, the sound grew louder, not fainter. He wrote, "The earth murmured like a choir beneath my boots, but no living thing made the noise." In the decades that followed, settlers and travelers reported similar experiences. Soft, unearthly tones drifting from the mounds at night. Some compared it to a flute, others to many voices in harmony, and some swore it sounded like words, though no one could ever make out what they were saying. Native legends, the sleeping ancestors. Local native tribes have their own stories about these mounds. Some say they are burial grounds of great chiefs, and the singing is the voices of ancestors guiding the living. Others claim the mounds mark places of crossing, where the boundary between this world and the spirit realm is thin, allowing echoes of the other side to leak through. A Shawnee elder once described the mounds as breathing with memory and warned that disturbing them brings terrible misfortune. Indeed, there are tales of grave robbers and amateur diggers attempting to excavate the mounds, only to meet mysterious fates. Accidents, illnesses, or even vanishing altogether within weeks of their trespass. Scientific investigations, the impossible frequency. In 1978, a small team of researchers from Indiana University camped near one of the most active singing mounds. They brought sound recording equipment and seismic monitors, hoping to capture the unexplained phenomenon. And they did. Around 3:14 a.m., their microphones detected a steady harmonic tone, faint but clear, seemingly rising from the earth. It oscillated between 17 and 21 hertz, a frequency that is barely audible to the human ear but often felt as much as heard. The seismic monitors showed no tremors, no underground movement to explain it. There were no caves or hollow chambers below, and the tone wasn't coming from wind or geological activity. It was as though the soil itself vibrated with music. When analyzed, the recording revealed something even stranger. The tone wasn't random noise. It followed a pattern, almost like a chant or song with repeating intervals, as if someone or something was singing deliberately. The Night of the Lanterns. One of the eeriest modern encounters took place in 1996, when two campers claimed to see floating lights above a singing mound in Tippecanoe County. They described orbs of pale blue light moving slowly in a circle, rising and falling in the air while the mound emitted its unearthly hum. When they tried to approach, the lights vanished instantly, and the sound stopped as if a switch had been flipped. The two men ran back to their camp, only to hear the song resume a few minutes later, this time softer, as if further underground. Locals say the phenomenon repeats once every few years, often around the equinox, but no one has ever captured the lights on film. The unsolved connection. Many archaeologists believe these mounds were part of a vast, ancient network of ceremonial sites built by a culture older than recorded history in Indiana. The Hopewell people are often credited with their construction, yet the musical properties of these few mounds have no known precedent among Hopewell structures. Some theorists suggest the mounds are resonance chambers, intentionally built to amplify natural earth sounds or distant thunder. They are burial sites where sound is a spiritual medium, connecting the living with the dead. Or, more unsettling, the tones are not natural at all. They are a message, a signal from something still beneath the soil waiting, standing on a singing mound. If you ever find yourself in the Indiana wilderness, on a quiet night, and you stumble upon a lonely, grass-covered hill, you might not think twice about it. But if you stop, if you really listen, you might hear it, a hum that feels like a heartbeat, a distant choir rising from the depths. A song that has been playing for over 1,000 years, with no one alive to remember its words. And in that moment, you'll wonder, are you hearing the voices of the past? Or is something still alive beneath your feet, humming in the dark? Next, the enigmatic Carroll County Stone, a map to nowhere. Deep in the rural heart of Indiana, hidden among fields and winding creeks, there lies a story of a single stone. A stone so strange, so utterly out of place, that even today, it remains one of the state's most baffling mysteries. Locals call it the Carroll County Stone, and many believe it could be the oldest map of North America, carved long before humans were ever supposed to know its shape. The discovery? A farmer's unearthly find. The tale begins in 1871 when a farmer plowing his field in Carroll County struck something hard beneath the soil. Expecting a buried tree root or chunk of limestone, he dug deeper and uncovered a flat slab of rock, roughly 3 feet across. But it wasn't just a rock. Its surface was covered in intricate carvings, unlike anything he had ever seen. Lines, shapes, and channels that seemed to form rivers, mountains, and coastlines. Some claimed that if you looked closely, the layout bore an eerie resemblance to the Great Lakes region, though many areas didn't match known geography of the time. Even stranger, parts of the carving looked like landmasses that don't exist, or perhaps once did. The farmer, bewildered and frightened, dragged the stone to his barn and kept it there, showing it only to curious neighbors. Word spread quickly, drawing the attention of academics, treasure hunters, and spiritualists alike. The Impossible Age. When experts examined the stone in the late 1800s, they were baffled. It was carved from a type of dolomite rock, which naturally occurs in Indiana, but the markings were so weathered, they appeared to be thousands of years old, far older than any known civilization in the area. This presented a problem. According to mainstream history, the first humans to map landmasses in North America would not appear for many centuries to come. Who carved this? And how could they possibly know the shape of the land around them? The Vanishing Stone. The Carroll County stone became a local legend for decades, passed from hand to hand, shown at small-town fairs, and eventually displayed in a private collection. Then, sometime in the early 1900s, it disappeared. No one knows exactly what happened. Some say it was stolen. Others claim a wealthy collector purchased it and locked it away. A more chilling story suggests that men from a government agency quietly took the stone and hushed up its existence, fearing it would rewrite human history. Today, only sketches and a few faded photographs remain, showing the peculiar carvings. The original artifact has never been recovered. Theories that won't die. Over the years, dozens of theories have swirled around the Carroll County stone. In an ancient map, some believe it depicts the Great Lakes during a different era, perhaps thousands of years before glaciers reshaped the land. A lost civilization, it could have been made by a forgotten culture with a level of geographical knowledge far beyond what history allows. A cataclysm record. Others think it might be a memory of a land that vanished, perhaps swallowed by rising waters or a great flood. Extraterrestrial origin. A few fringe researchers claim the map resembles satellite images of Earth, not possible without aerial technology. Could it have been a gift or a remnant from visitors from the stars? No explanation has ever been proven. The carvings were deliberate, purposeful, and too detailed to be random scratches. Whoever made the stone knew something, but that knowledge has been lost to time. The haunting of the field. Locals say that even now, the field where the stone was found feels wrong. Farmers report strange compass malfunctions near the site. Animals refuse to graze there, and some claim to hear whispers on the wind, as if the earth remembers the artifact that was stolen from it. A legend persists that on certain moonlit nights, the stone is still buried somewhere nearby,